Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be talking about abilities in the Pokemon TCG, but not the regular Pokemon TCG, Pokemon TCG Pocket. And things are very different with abilities in Pokemon TCG Pocket. Pocket's supposed to be fast paced, not like super fast, but faster than the regular Pokemon TCG. So the things you do in your turn, you could play up to three basic Pokemon, or you could play four Pokemon. You could play four in any combination of basics or evolutions, theoretically. You could play um, items. You could play a few. There aren't that many items you could play though. You could play one supporter and then you attack, right? But you're not going to do all those things. You're going to play like three cards and attack. But an ability is something, and once you play a card, you play that card, right? You're not going to play it again unless it's like a Weezing, which you can Koga up or something. But that's just one extra card or two, I suppose. So you're only playing a few cards every turn, and that's a few things you're doing. You're attacking and you're doing some other things. But then abilities are something that you can use every turn, or at least activated abilities, I guess is the term I'll be using versus like passive abilities, which an activated ability is an ability that you click on it and it does something, versus a passive ability, which there are um, four of, I think, and they do something. They're just like a permanent thing on a Pokemon, like it takes less damage or something. So the activated abilities are something that need to be thought out carefully. They need to be interesting and they need to be meaningful, and they also need to be balanced because they could theoretically stack, and there are different things you could do with them. So we're going to talk about them. And there's a few different ones, and they're kind of into different categories as well. We'll start off with the simplest, which we have Cloyster and Melmetal. I haven't played with either of these. I don't think Cloyster is very good. It does 70 for 3, and its ability says it takes 10 less from attacks and has 120 HP. Looking at the metagame, the best decks are, I mean, this isn't like living a lot. It's not living drastically more than like the Golduck, which is good. Golduck's not a broken card, but essentially it has 40 more HP instead of 30 or 50, like, or 40 or 50, depending how many times it's getting hit. It essentially gets more HP, but it's not living that much. It's not really living two attacks most likely, and so this ability isn't super meaningful. I would kind of like to see abilities. Also, abilities, we only see one on an EX. And a Pokemon can only have a single point Pokemon can have only one attack from what we've seen, versus an EX could have two. They don't all have two, and most don't have abilities, as I said, either. So in order to add depth to a Pokemon that's a single point Pokemon, which most are, the main way to do that would be using an ability, which some are really cool. But this one's not. It's a passive ability though, which is fine. Melmetals, you take 20 less, and also has 10 more HP. No, it's 10 more HP, so it's noticeably tanky. It does get one shot by Mewtwo EX, which isn't great, and of course it gets one shot by like Charizard EX, but it does survive decently well. I think Melmetal and Meltan are interesting. In some ways, I'd compare them to. I was gonna say I'd compare it to the Primeape and Mankey, where you need to attack with the basic to kind of get set up, but you have less HP. That's not a great comparison because you could just evolve to the Melmetal, but regardless, Melmetal's kind of cool. Metal's like really bad. It's like so clearly the worst type, unfortunately. I mean, Dragon's also bad. There isn't a lot of Dragon stuff. There's only one Dragon evolution line, but there's what Melmetal, Meltan, Mawile, Bisharp, and Pawniard, I believe, are the only metal Pokemon, which is not great. Not a great showing there. Uh, Bisharp's like the same as Golduck, and Golduck's good, but it's a better typing, and Golduck's not that good. It's solid, and it has Misty, and it has the Psyduck as well. So ultimately, Metal's really in an unfortunate spot, and I expect to see a lot of Metal in the next expansion, the mini expansion, hopefully. But I don't know. I want to talk about that at some point, or maybe it'll come out by then. I'm really excited for the mini expansion, and the main expansion as well. The mini expansion, I think, will just be another pack. We have the Mewtwo pack, the Pikachu pack, and the Charizard pack. So it'll be a fourth one, and I don't know what it'll be. I think some people have better ideas of that. But tell me what you think it'll be and what you think that'll add in the comments. But regardless, Metal is really bad, so it doesn't really have a good partner. I think Bomble is actually a pretty good card. I haven't played these cards though because, as I said, there's just not enough stuff for Metal. But I do think Melmetal's abilities, I mean, it's more meaningful. It's twice as good as Cloyster's, but there's nothing really much to say about these. I don't think they're a problem. I think they're cool. They're kind of They're not super interesting though. They're not activated, but they're also not slowing the game down. They're not an extra thing you're going to do during your turn. So they're fine. I don't so a little one thing that I find kind of weird with Pocket, there's damage calculations. If you play Giovanni, it'll say you're doing 10 more. It'll like calculate it, it says how much you're doing. So if you're attacking with Pikachu EX, and you have a full bench of lightning Pokemon, let's say you're hitting 100. I don't know if it said, but then if you're hitting weakness, it won't say that you're doing more. It will kind of signify that you're hitting weakness. It's not super hard to figure out or anything like that, but it doesn't actually show the amount of damage you're doing, which is kind of weird that it shows it sometimes, but not in some cases, but not the other. So I don't remember if it shows it for these. I think it does, but regardless, I think these are kind of cool abilities. And especially with Melmetal, it gives it more depth and a reason to play it. You would never play this card, I don't think, without the ability. I mean, you maybe could, but I do think Melmetal is a pretty cool like Pokemon and evolution line. Definitely one that I do enjoy. I haven't played yet. Yeah, it's not that good, but it's a card I will probably play at some point. Then the other passive abilities, we have I said there's four. Poliwrath is a stage 2. A lot of these Pokemon, they're all evolution. No, Porygon's not an evolution. I gotta talk about Porygon. I kind of talked about, I don't like that card, but we'll get to that later. Poliwrath, though, has a passive ability, I guess. If it's hidden to, then you do 20 damage to the attacking Pokemon your opponent's active. Oh, another question. Does this hit weakness? Like, it's not damage counters, but I don't know if it hits weakness. Like, bench attacks don't hit weakness, but it doesn't say that. I feel like there are some things that I just don't know how they work in Pocket. They don't come up. Like, this isn't a very good card. It's not like a completely terrible card, but Water's a very good type, and so you have better cards on basics and stage ones than Poliwrath, so there's not really any reason to play this card. Like Articuno EX is better, Lapras EX is probably better, and of course Starmie EX is better, and I talked about Golduck, that's probably better. Greninja might be better as well, which we'll take a look at. Oh, no, Greninja's definitely better. As just like a raw attacker, it might be better. I'm not really sure. They're kind of different. This has a decent amount of HP. It's pretty high, and so it's kind of tanky. Then could get Hindu twice and then do some return damage. Poliwrath, again, it's a passive ability, so like it's something that has an action kind of associated with it, more so than other passive abilities. But it's definitely one that's fine. I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about this ability, and I wouldn't hate seeing abilities like this printed on Pokemon that are maybe basic Pokemon, so they can be more useful for their ability. This is just a little bit of extra damage on the side that it interacts a little. I mean, it's not that different. You could just add 100 damage to it, and it would more or less function the same way. This does allow you to apply pressure without being powered up yet, but I don't know. I guess the pressure without being powered up is meaningful, and it's better than just adding an extra 20 damage onto the attack, but it's not super interesting. But as I said, nothing really bad to say about this ability either. And then we have Gengar EX. Gengar EX is kind of interesting with its ability Shadowy Spellbind, which says as long as it's in the active. And this is the only ability that I believe can only be used. Oh, no. Victory Bell can only be used in the active. That is an activated ability. Oh, no. Weezing can also only be used in the active. But this is the only passive ability that can only be used in the active. I realize that's not exactly true. The other ones only would really come into would essentially, oh no, Polymath says only in the active. The other ones would also mainly be usable in the active, but doesn't really affect your opponent in the same way that this one does. This one stops you from being able to play any supporter cards if it's in the active. And then you have Spooky Shot, which is 100 for 3 Psychic, which isn't very good, but it's not like completely terrible either, as you are a disruptive card with 170 HP, which is high, I guess. Stage 2 EX HPs, this isn't like insane. It might actually not be that high. It might be a little low, but compared to most Pokemon that actually see play, because most stage 2s, EXs, there's only a few of them, so you're not running into them all the time, but it's higher than like Mewtwo EX and Pikachu EX and Starmie EX, which are lower stages, but do have lower HP as well. So the 170 HP is something that is good. Being a stage 2, you do need something to be allowed to be better, and it's not your attack, and your ability is solid though, so you can probably take a hit, and then your opponent's support locks for multiple turns. But the interesting thing is, normally if you have something that stops you like from doing stuff once in the active, you could play Sabrina to get around it theoretically, but you obviously can't do that here. So that's a little weird. It doesn't really have counterplay if you're super supporter focused, but ultimately supporters are, they're not bad in Pocket. Misty's very good, but you're probably not stopping Misty with this, right? Unless something kind of weird is happening within the game. And then research, you're probably not stopping with this, though maybe you might stop it. And that is meaningful. You're looking at Sabrina and Giovanni and maybe Koga. I suppose you're trying to stop. Maybe Erica as well. I mean, people don't play Gengar EX very much. It's not that good. But this ability is kind of cool. It's control-y. And we need to compare it to the other supporter lock cards, which are the Gengar, the regular one. And there are a lot of parallels between EXs and non-EXs, but there are differences as well. This one, the attack supporter locks and only does 15 is 1, which is like very different, and it has lower HP by 40 because it's not an EX. So some differences here. The HP is the big difference of the damage output. In our stage 2, you're looking for a higher energy attack with higher effectiveness. I mean, cheaper is always better as an attack, but obviously cheaper attacks are weaker. So on stage 2s, they're taking a bunch of time to set up anyways. You want like 2 energies, probably the good attack. Is maybe what you're looking for, but 3 also works. And generally, we've seen the best attacks on. I don't know. I guess it's been different. Like 2 or 3 energies is kind of what you're looking at. But regardless, Gengar EX is better than the regular Gengar, but they're also both Gengar and they're stage 2. So the other supporter lock card is the Psyduck, which I've talked about before in the video with the Golduck, but it says it supporter locks for 1 colorless on a basic. Psyduck's a really interesting Pokemon, and it really shows how strong a supporter lock is, which is not that strong. Because if it was really strong, then people would be playing Psyduck all the time, and people just aren't, right? So ultimately, Psyduck is a card that shows that supporter lock isn't super strong. I don't hate like pseudo control-y stuff. I think control can be fine for the game. People can find it annoying still, and I understand that. But I do think that not Greninja that I do think Greninja's ability is cool. I will say that, but Gengar EX's ability is fine for the game. I know some people might find it a little annoying, but I haven't really heard complaints about it. The other annoying ability would be Hypno. I mean, some of the other abilities you could describe as annoying, but Hypno is a card to stage 1. We only have a few stage 1s of the. Well, we have a good few stage 1s of the abilities, but you have Hypno with this ability. Once during your turn, you can flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. I am not a fan of this ability. I don't despise it, but it's random. I've complained about randomness in Pocket before, and I know I'm not alone. I don't think some coin flips are bad, but this is pretty meaningful. And if you have 1 Hypno, then it's a 25% chance that your opponent will be asleep during their next turn, assuming they don't evolve. If they evolve, they're not asleep. But that's a low chance. But if that happens, that's a really, really big. Assuming you're not knocking them out. If you knock them out, they're also not asleep. But Hypno is. This could be a very game-changing ability, but it is luck-based on a double coin flip. The coin flip for itself, and then the coin flip for asleep. If you have 2 Hypnos, the odds are what are the odds? I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's a 75% chance they're asleep, a 3 out of 4, so it's 3 out of 8. There we go. So 3 out of 8 chance that they will be asleep on their turn, which is like a decent odds, but not I mean, it's not like great odds, right? It's higher than 1 out of 4. But anyways, you could stack those Hypnos and they'll be asleep some, right? But then it's still pretty random. So I don't love Hypno's randomness, and it's really big and meaningful. I think special conditions are ultimately not great in Pocket either. Like I think Wheezing, I do think Wheezing's cool. I'll talk about that, but they're a little complicated. They are like explained in the game, but I don't think they're necessary. They're one of the aspects that they don't explain themselves, right? I think a lot of people I know with the regular TCG don't know the special conditions that well. Even I don't know them exactly. Like I don't know the order that they happen in. I think there's an order, but it barely comes up. And special conditions are just a very small part of Pocket, and I don't think they're necessary. So I don't love special conditions, and I don't love sleep. It's probably sleep and confusion are my least favorite. I don't remember which ones are in the game. I know poison is. Obviously, sleep is burn, confusion. I think paralysis is in the game as well. I don't think confusion and burn are in the game, but regardless, they could be added. I think sleep and confusion are the ones I don't like the most. But regardless, I don't think this Hypno is terrible. It's like disruptive. It's pretty solid. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of control-y. I don't have an issue with control, but I don't love coin flip control stuff. But regardless, Hypnos, it's okay. But it does slow the game down in a random sense. But it's okay. Throughout the course of the game, you should be your opponent will be asleep some, and sometimes they won't be asleep, but it'll make some difference. But um, I don't know. I think it's okay. I'm not a big fan of coin flips though. But Wheezing is not a coin flip card. Wheezing is one of my favorite cards in the game, and I think I'm not alone in that because its ability says once during your turn, if it's in the active, you can make your opponent's active poisoned. Poison does not stack, by the way. Um, I assumed it wasn't, so I just wasn't ever double poisoning. It's like, wait, does it? And it doesn't. So you can poison your opponent. They take a damage tick between every turn. Um, and one damage counter, 10 damage, I should say. There aren't damage counters in pocket. So, anyways, you do 10 between every turn. If they evolve out. And there are interesting things going on with the math here. Wheezing also has a mediocre attack, tackle 30 for 1 darkness, but then it's essentially guaranteed 40 with the gas leak. There's not really a way to stop special conditions at all. You can evolve, you can get out of it, but it will guarantee do that first 10 damage. And then it also has high retreat, so it synergizes with the supporter Koga. I'm not sure how I feel about the supporters in Pocket. I want to talk about them at some point separately, but Koga Weezing is fun. Koga also works with Mach. Weezing also has synergy with Mach, has synergy with Arbok. It has like some synergy with some different Pokemon, and it's a cool Pokemon. Because of the poison, the attack obviously is pretty boring and straightforward. But also it's an attack that does so low damage. There are times you wouldn't even necessarily want to use Darkness Energy in your deck. You can choose the types of energy in your deck if you don't know. You can do that by it's in the deck's like editor somewhere, though it's not super obvious, I feel like. But anyways, you can use that and use this card. In that situation, it's kind of tanky. A lot of these abilities are in tankier Pokemon to synergize with the abilities. And yeah, I like Weezing a lot. It's really fun. It's pretty solid, but it's not broken. It's one of the better single point Pokemon. Someone commented saying that they thought it was the best, and I don't think that's a crazy take. I don't think it's the best necessarily, but it's certainly solid. I made a tier list, and I'm pretty sure I put it in S tier, the top tier, whatever. We got Magneton. Magneton's I don't know. Magneton's kind of weird. It has its ability Volt Charge. Once during your turn, you can just attach a lightning energy from the energy zone to it for free. In addition to your attachment for turn, we'll talk about Gardevoir, which is kind of like this, but not really that much like it, to be honest. But they're, I guess, the most similar to each other than anything else. But Magneton's ability does give you extra energies on the board, which you can then pair with Lieutenant Surge. That's clearly like a thing you're kind of supposed to do. It's not great, right? I wouldn't really recommend playing Magneton. You can kind of use it as a pseudo pivot card. You just put a bunch of energy on it and can retreat. Its attack's not very good. 60 for 4 is terrible, but it's not actually for 4. I think I talked about it and said if you can build it up, it's essentially free, but that's a lot of turns, so that's not really true. It's not a super interesting Pokemon on its own. And also, if Pokemon wants to print a Magnezone card, which would make a lot of sense to print at some point, it would be very unfortunate if they don't ever print a Magnezone, then they need to make it not a Pokemon that becomes super broken if you just get a bunch of energy on it with relative ease. Excuse me. And then they also want it to have a more expensive attack with I feel like generally you want Pokemon to have attacks that be the same cost or more expensive as you evolve up. For example, that's why Haunter, which there are 2 Haunters, both attack for 1 energy, because the Gengar attacks for 1 energy on the stage 2. The Gengar EX attacks for 3. It's this weird jump up, but that's partially why I believe Jigglypuff is a Pokemon with, the 1's 2, the 1's 1, but the evolution's 3. Tell me if there are any Pokemon that break that rule. I can't think of any at all, but there might be some. But regardless, they probably want to make it more expensive, but not like a broken attack. So, and then they might add another Magneton, and there might be some weird stuff here. It kind of complicates design space. I don't think it's bad, though. It's kind of cool. I wish Lieutenant Surge was more universal. Lieutenant Surge is an okay supporter. I think it's within the realm of fine. I don't think it's as cool as something like Koga. It's not. It's like kind of exciting, but it's not super exciting. I mean, it's like big and flashy, which I guess is cool, but it has to do with Magneton. But Magneton's not really an interesting card in its own right because of its attack being very underwhelming. I think its attack could be 1 less energy and it would be noticeably better and cooler. I think Magneton's its ability is kind of cool. Its ability is what obviously defines it. That's true for most of these Pokemon, but it's definitely one that, I mean, it's very limited. It only accelerates to itself. so it only interacts in very specific ways, which I don't love. I'd like to see it be a bit more versatile or better for itself, either one of those. But it might end up being cool with a stage 2, but we'll see. Then we have the basic, the one basic Pokemon with an ability. I don't like this card. I don't know if I've talked about this and complained about it, but it's one of the cards in Pocket that I just really don't like in terms of its game design. It's not very good. If it was really good, I'd probably like dislike it more. The reason for me disliking it is because it like slows the game down. Every ability does, right? And some slow it down even more. Like they're focused on decision making. But Porygon is something that is theoretically a high skill level card to get value out of, because knowing your top deck, you need to kind of think through different game plans and different things. And there are some moderately interesting interactions. Pokédex is like the same as Porygon. I mean, you look at the top 3, it's more cards, but this is kind of like Pokédex. You need to use it every turn, though, right? Every turn you want to use this ability, and it's also a really boring ability. It hardly changes anything, but adds more information on your plate to think about, and it takes up time, and it's like slow and it's boring. It doesn't fit Pocket at all as a game that's supposed to be faster paced. And so I don't like Porygon. We've seen cards like this in the regular TCG. We've seen like more Pico and things like that. And I think those cards are fine, but I think they're actually cool for the game. I think they're fun. They're not great, but they're kind of fun. But with Porygon, I'd have a bigger issue if this card had like a good attack. The attack's not like that bad, but it's not very good either. It is pretty average attack, average like previous evolution attack. It doesn't evolve. If people start playing like, because Porygon gets some interesting weird cards, definitely the various Porygons, the Porygon 2, Porygon Z. So we might see those. We might see them soon. Who knows? But if we do, then that people will be playing this Porygon and using its ability every turn, and it just slows the game down unnecessarily. And the pace of play isn't like that fast anyway, so it's not as big of a deal as I thought. I definitely think Pocket would be better if it was a little faster. There are definitely just a good few things I'd change about the game, but Porygon is a card where its ability feels kind of meaningless, honestly. If it looked at more cards or something, it would be more interesting, or if it rearranged them, it would be more interesting. It would be slower, but it would be meaningful. Right now, it's not very meaningful, but it's just meaningful enough to slow the game down. So I don't like Porygon's design ability. If anyone does, tell me, and I'd be interested in hearing that. It does have some strategic element, and the strategic element's kind of interesting, but it's not that interesting. Then we have the stage 2s, though. These are the interesting ones. You got Gardevoir, you got Pidgeot, you have it was Gengar EX to stage 2 as well. You got Greninja, you have okay, there are a few stage 2s you already talked about, but you got Victory Bell and Butterfree. Victory Bell, I think, is the one that sees the least amount of play. Victory Bell could be insane, but it's very awkward to set up. But if we get an evolution search card, this card could be really, really good. Oh, and an evolution card like Pokeball just gets evolutions, or any Pokemon. Anyways, Victory Bell says if it's in the active, when starting a turn, you may switch in one of your opponent's bench basic Pokemon to the active. It's Gust, and Gust isn't something in the game at all. This is the only Gust card. There is Sabrina, and there are some other cards kind of like Sabrina. I know there's like a Graplock, there might be some others, and that send your opponent's active to the bench, but you don't choose what gets set up. If they only have one benched, then it's the same thing, but this only Gust basic. But this could win you the game, right? You just gust up a Pokemon and knock it out. Right now, your opponent could have guy play Pikachu EX. I think it's the best deck. I've said this before, and Pikachu EX and Zapdos EX are two basic Pokemon that have over 100 HP, so they're difficult to one-shot by most decks. And you just go ahead and play those two down. If your opponent, like you have the Pikachu EX as the main attacker, Zapdos EX you don't really attack with, but you want it on the board because it'll survive a hit. So that's the big thing. You just play it on your bench and your opponent Sabrina's, and you're like, oh, have my Zapdos EX. You can't knock it out. But Victory Bell said, like, you have those two, then you probably have like a Pincurchin or something, and that does way less HP. So then you just gust the Pincurchin, knock it out. Maybe with the Victory Bell, though, you wouldn't one-shot it with that unless you had Giovanni, or maybe something else. You would one-shot Blitzle, I think, has 60. But regardless, Victory Bell is theoretically really good. I have not played against it or with it. It ultimately doesn't do enough. It's a stage 2, and its ability is good once other things are set up and going, but it's unfortunately just not really a good enough card, I don't think. If anyone's played with it, tell me how you've found it. But it's a pretty underwhelming card, unfortunately. But might end up being really good in the future. Who knows? But takes up a bunch of deck slots. Doesn't necessarily do very much, but is a kind of cool card. Then we have Pidgeot. Pidgeot is similar, but it's a stage 2. It's colorless, but it forces your opponent's active to the bench. This one has seen play. It doesn't need to be inactive, which is nice. Its attack's also better. It's just a more universal Pokemon, and it's also pretty good with the Arbok. Excuse me, my voice is a little tired right now, and maybe so am I. But Pidgeot's ability is pretty good, and it's pretty fun. I feel like Pidgeot's a cool card. And yeah, I mean, Pidgeot's fun. It's a little annoying to have to deal with, and that's fine though. I think it's like pseudo controlly, or just like disruptive. It's not really like control. I don't know. It kind of forces your opponent to burn energy cards or something like that, or it might be useless. There are times when Pidgeot's just like not really doing much of anything, but I think it's fine. I'd like to see maybe a little more depth with Pidgey or Pidgeotto. I think they're very boring cards. I don't even remember what they do, but I remember they're not very interesting. It might be like 30 for 1 and 20 for 1 and something like that. Um, I don't know the previous evolutions. Oh, no, it's 10 for 1 has 60. I thought it was 50, had 50 and it's 20 for 1, but regardless, they are pretty boring. But Pidgeot is, it's cool. I think it's a fun card. Wish it was, it's one of those cards which could have a little more depth than the previous evolution. Maybe a Pidgeotto force your points active to the bench with its for 1 energy or something like that. Seems pretty fair, but whatever. I think Pidgeot's certainly fine with its current state. It's a colorless Pokemon. Colorless Pokemon is supposed to be versatile. In terms of in terms of colorless Pokemon, you have okay. You have Meowth, you have Farfetch'd, you have Wigglytuff EX, which is Wigglytuff EX is okay. It's a little annoying. I thought it was bad for a while, but I think it's pretty solid. And you have some like kind of fillery Pokemon. Kangaskhan, I think Kangaskhan's kind of good, but also I'm not a massive fan of the way the coin flips work. Apparently, you got 3 EVs. I always forget you have 3 EVs. There's some different cards here, but I think Pidgeot fits in pretty well with those cards. It is like a cool card. Then we have Gardevoir. Gardevoir, I think, is the best ability Pokemon in the game right now, but I'm not sure. Greninja's good, and Weezing's good. I think it's one of those three. I do like Butterfree, but I've not played it yet. I really do want to play it at some point. I don't know the previous evolutions, or maybe I do, but I don't have the Venusaurs or like the Venusaur EX or the Execute EX, which you want to be playing it with. But Gardevoir is definitely really good with Mewtwo EX, and it's one of the best decks in the game. I think, to me, it's pretty clearly the third best deck in the game, and I think based on what I see, it's somewhere around there as well. I'm actually not seeing it that much, but it's definitely a scary deck to play against. It's ultimately not a super fun deck, in my opinion. It's like you set up, you win. You don't set up, you lose. But I think Charizard DX is cooler and more fun than it. I mean, I think Charizard is a cooler Pokemon than Mewtwo. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. I think people have started to get to the point where it's like, oh, Charizard's like overhyped. I mean, I do think Charizard's overhyped. I don't think it's like the coolest Pokemon, but it's a kind of cool Pokemon. And Moltres CX, you got like a fun combo going on there where you can disrupt the setup. You can hit into the setup Pokemon and do some stuff during that point of the game versus Mewtwo EX. It's like, oh, I'm going turn 3 pretty consistently going, not like super consistently, but more consistently than Charizard EX, where you're almost definitely not going turn 3. And so you have this potential, or you just whiff and then you can't do anything. So either you just win or you just lose, and it's kind of cut and dry. I don't have an issue with Gardevoir though. I don't necessarily have an issue with Mewtwo EX. I have an issue with how they interact. I don't think they're horrible for the game or anything like that either though. I haven't been seeing them played that much, and I haven't played with it that much. I played it a lot earlier and played against it a lot earlier, but regardless, Gardevoir is fine. Psychic Pokemon are okay. Mewtwo EX is very good, and the rest are. Looking at Psychic Pokemon, you have Gengar EX, which you could play with Gardevoir, but that's 2 Stage 2s. Alakazam, I don't think is really playing Gardevoir. You have Mewtwo EX, and you have the Mewtwo, and then you also would have the Mr. Mime and Jinx. I think Mr. Mime's a little underrated, but Jinx is better than Mr. Mime. Jinx is solid. I think there's an opportunity for a Psychic Toolbox style deck with Gardevoir, which would be really fun to see. But right now we haven't seen that really. We've seen Mewtwo EX, maybe a Mewtwo, maybe a Jinx, and maybe like a Kangaskhan or Farfetch'd or something like that in there. But ultimately, Gardevoir is kind of cool, though. Mewtwo EX, I might actually say it should be nerfed a little. I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of one-shots in the game. I think the two-shotting aspect of the water decks and Pikachu EX is really enjoyable right now. I currently do like the flow and the feel of the game. It feels like going first, going second. There's not a mass. It's noticeably better to go second, but it doesn't feel like you just win if you go second. Very often. It happens occasionally, but not that often. But I do like Gardevoir some here. I don't. It's not my favorite Pokemon though of the abilities. My favorite, it's Greninja. I'm just gonna say that Greninja's ability plays you 2 damage, or doing 2 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. It's extra damage. It's kind of thoughtful. Arguably, it is like the slowest ability. You not only have to choose to use it, but you choose where it goes. There's like 2 aspects to it, so it is the slowest. I'm pretty sure. Now Pidgeot's probably slower. You make a decision, and then your opponent makes the decision. But and Victory Bell might be the same speed as Greninja. Yeah, probably a little. I think Greninja is a little slower. It's not super slow though, and it is a stage 2, and it's a fun card. I mean, I like Greninja. I complained about Porygon being slow, but it's slow and it's not interesting. Greninja is really cool, just doing some extra damage, and it really brings to life Articuno EX's spread attack, which is really boring without Greninja. It is somewhat meaningful and kind of adds to its competitive like viability, I guess, stopping your opponent from retreating and being able to play around, you being able to attack whatever you want, because you will still do some bench damage and slowly chip away at those until you eventually knock him out. If your opponent's playing like I don't know, something with like 190 HP is kind of what I'm thinking of. Pikachu EX would kind of apply to, but it's a little high there. But regardless, its HP is a little high, Pikachu EX. But anyways, I think Greninja is a really fun card. It's fun within the water stuff. It's fun outside of the water stuff. It's really fun. It's ability that does damage. I mean, I love it. I love cards like this in the regular TCG. I liked Inteleon. I liked just lots of things like this. I think Hawlucha in the regular standard format is okay. I'd like to see it like does this can hit the active or the bench. I like that. I don't know. I like Greninja. I like Zebstrika. I like Hitmonlee. This is a type of card I like. Maybe you're expecting more better analysis. It is a pretty solid attacker as well. It has a decent Its HP is kind of low, but in terms of compared to general Pokemon, it's on the higher end. And then it can tank hits, which is very meaningful. And then it does decent damage. It does at a minimum 80 for 2 if you want to do that, or 60 and then 20 to the bench somewhere, or whatever. Or you can not attack with it and get value by leaving it on the bench. You need to set it up. I think pairing Greninja with Meowth, I'd 100% recommend. I found Meowth to be an awesome Pokemon in Greninja and Gardevoir. Obviously not Pikachu, but I've liked Meowth, and I think Greninja is a really fun card. Pairing it with the Weezing's cool. It's a little hard to describe exactly how it's fun, but you're able to do damage, but do it slower, and you feel like you're using a single point Pokemon to do damage in a slower capacity, which is really what you're looking for. I think single point Pokemon are cool because they do stuff over time and kind of set up these game-winning situations. Greninja is the exact embodiment of that, and also Greninja is a cool Pokemon. I think Greninja is cool. I think a lot of people think Greninja is cool. Some people might think it's overhyped, but I really think it is a fun Pokemon. When we have Butterfree, Butterfree is also one of my favorite cards. I guess I haven't played it, but it seems really fun. Healing, I think it's kind of broken and annoying in the non-EX format. I haven't played it. I've played it a few times, and I've like always played against Butterfree, and that's annoying. But the game's not meant to be played in the non-EX format. It's meant to be played with the EXs, and I think it works decently with that, with the grass type being very clearly centered around healing. I think grass is like I think most of the types are really showcasing what their type identity is. Normally, in like the regular TCG, there isn't really clear type identity because most types really have one good attacker, maybe two, that are really prominent, and it's kind of weird. Most of the types don't have clear identity. Looking throughout the different periods of time, it's hard to see. You kind of know what they're supposed to be. Grass is supposed to be healing. Lightning is supposed to be speed. Water is supposed to be spread. Psychic is supposed to be sometimes also spread. Versatility, interesting abilities. Darkness, it does have poison within it, and might have I don't know. Darkness isn't great. Well, no, it's not that bad. It's just been a solid type, but it hasn't had as many cards as other types. And then something like Fire has big attacks, discarding, burn, and then with Metal you have tankiness. But with Pocket, you see this. You see this all over the place. You see what the stuff I said Greninja has. For water, you have the stuff I said Hypno does what Psychic does. Gengar EX does that. Gardevoir kind of does that. I don't know. Butterfree does what I said Grass does. Weezing does what I said Darkness does. Metal does what Melmetal does what I said Metal does. And Psychic Pokemon have these generally weaker, or no, colorless Pokemon have weaker abilities that are supporting from like the like more support Pokemon. And you see that as like these secondary attackers like Farfetch, Meowth, things like that. So I think that the types are well defined, and you like a certain type because you like what that type does. You look at Ninetales and it fits the bill well. Blaine, where you have like an explosive supporter, and you have Pikachu EX, Starmie EX, Articuno EX. These all fit what the types are supposed to do very well. And I think Butterfree is a perfect example of that. Also, a card I really like here is the Caterpie, which its attack says search for a random grass Pokemon, put into your hand. I think this is really solid. Ultimately, its HP is low, but I think Caterpie is cool. Also, you could play this, attack with it in a non-grass deck. Grass is the tanky type. You could do like Melmetal Caterpie or like Melmetal Butterfree. I don't know how good that would be, as the HP tankiness is only okay within Melmetal against like it's not tanking Mewtwo EX or Charizard EX, but it could be solid in some situations as well. But I'd really like this evolution line as well. It's kind of like the counterpart to Greninja. I talked about how much I love Greninja. I think Butterfree is cool as well. I don't think it's oppressive or super annoying, but I think it's cool. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Pokemon does with these stage 2 abilities, and really all abilities. I think most of these are generally fine, and I'm looking forward to more. We see 13. Most Pokemon don't have most good decks aren't really playing abilities, I feel like, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Pokemon will do with the next expansion, with the mini expansion, especially right now. I'm really excited. But tell me down below what you think, what abilities you'd want to see. But consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And that's awesome. I'm excited to see you in the next video.